The year is 1840, and a sensational trial is captivating the whole of France. The accused is a dark-haired, sophisticated Parisian named Marie Lafarge, and she had been accused of poisoning to death her husband. It was the first trial to use forensic toxicology. A year before the murder, 23-year-old Marie Fortuné-Chapelle was married against her will to Charles Lafarge, a brutish iron founder who claimed to be rich, but in fact was bankrupt. While on a business trip to Paris, Marie sent him passionate love letters and, as a sign of affection, a cake, and he received it in the post. He ate a piece of it and suddenly became violently ill soon after. As cholera-like symptoms were common in those days, he did not think about consulting with a doctor and threw away the remains of the cake, thinking that its freshness would not survive the journey back to his home. When he arrived, still feeling under the weather, but having raised some money for the business, Marie sent him to bed and fed him venison and truffles. Almost immediately, he was again violently ill and died about 2 weeks later. Suspicious officials identified arsenic in his vomit and stomach, and the finger was pointing at his wife, who was arrested for murder. But as it would turn out, things weren't quite as cut and dried as that. Marie Lafarge was born in Paris in 1816, the daughter of an artillery officer who died in a hunting accident when she was aged 12. Her mother remarried soon after and died 7 years later. The now 18-year-old Marie was taken in by her maternal aunt, who was married to the Secretary General of the Bank of France, and the two women did not get along at all, even though she was treated well and was kept aware of her status as the poor relative. She went to a top school, her peers being part of moneyed aristocracy. She used every means she could think of to persuade them that she, too, came from a wealthy family, and became envious when she saw her friends marrying rich noblemen. At the end of the day, she had little say about her marriage prospects. Her dowry of 90,000 francs, while considerable, was not impressive considering her family's status, and she was left with feelings of inadequacy. By her 23rd birthday, there was no suitor in sight, so one of her uncles took matters in hand, and without her knowledge, contacted a marriage broker. This produced just one candidate, who fitted the advice of her late father that no marriage contract should be made with a man whose only income is his salary. This individual was Charles Lafarge, a large, coarse and unsophisticated man, aged 28. In 1817, his father had bought a former 13th century Carthusian monastery in the hamlet of Le Glandier, which is south of Limoges. It had fallen into disrepair after its dissolution during the French Revolution. In an effort to make it profitable, Lafarge had the idea of turning part of the estate into an iron foundry, a venture that plunged him into debt and bankruptcy. In 1839, Charles saw a good marriage as the only way to pay his creditors, and had engaged the same marriage broker who was hired to find a husband for Marie. He promoted himself as a wealthy iron manufacturer, with property worth more than 200,000 francs, with an annual income of 30,000 from the foundry alone. He also carried letters of recommendation from his priest and local mayor. To hide that a marriage broker was involved in facilitating their relationship, Marie's uncle passed off Lafarge as a friend and arranged a chance meeting at the opera. From her perspective, she found him common and repulsive, but because he advertised himself as the owner of a palatial estate, she eventually agreed to marry him, and just 4 days after the initial meeting, Her aunt announced their engagement, and they were married on the 10th of August 1839. The couple then left Paris for Le Glandier to live at the estate after a short honeymoon. This union, as it could be expected, did not get off to a good start. When the newlyweds arrived at Le Glandier, Lafarge's house, Marie was immediately disillusioned. Instead of a fine, well-kept residence, the house, situated within the ruins of the former monastery, was damp and rat-infested. Her in-laws were peasants who disgusted her and regarded her with deep distrust. Instead of the wealth she expected, she was faced with considerable debt. In her despondency, Marie locked herself in her room the first night and wrote a letter to her husband, imploring him to release her from their marriage, while threatening to take her life with arsenic. Lafarge, whose business affairs were in complete disarray, agreed to make concessions, but not release her from the marriage. He promised not to assert his marital privileges until he restored the estate to its original condition. This seemed to pacify Marie, and the relationship appeared to have improved in the ensuing weeks. Despite her situation, Marie wrote letters to her school friends, pretending that she was having a happy domestic life. She also tried to help her husband by writing letters of recommendation to potential investors in Paris, where he hoped to raise money. In December 1839, before he left on the business trip to the capital, Marie made a will bequeathing to her husband her entire inheritance, with a proviso that he would do the same for her. He did, but made another will without Marie's knowledge, leaving the Le Glandier property to his mother. The day Lafarge had returned home from the trip, his health had not improved, and the family doctor, Dr. Barden, was called and agreed with the cholera-like symptoms, and was not suspicious when Marie asked him for a prescription for arsenic in order to kill the rats that infested the property. The next day, Lafarge experienced leg cramps, dehydration, and nausea. Such was the concern of the family. Someone was at his bedside constantly, including a cousin called Emma Pointier and a friend by the name of Anna Brun. Marie treated him with various potions, especially gum arabic, which, according to her, always did her good, and which she always kept a ready supply in a small wooden medicine box. But to no avail. Due to his condition, another doctor called Massenat was called for a second opinion, and he diagnosed cholera and prescribed eggnog to build him up. Anna noticed Marie taking some white powder from her medicine box and stirring it into the eggnog, saying it was orange blossom sugar. Suspicions were increased when she noticed a few white flakes floating on the surface of the drink after the patient took a few sips. She showed the glass to Dr. Massenat, who tasted the contents, and although it tasted slightly bitter, he attributed the flakes to some sealing plaster that may have fallen in the glass. Anna was not convinced. Later on, she saw Marie stir more white powder into some soup that had been prepared for her husband. Again, he fell violently ill shortly afterwards. Anna took the cup of soup away and, when out of earshot of Marie, whispered her suspicions to the rest of the family. On the 12th of January, Emma Pontier, who regarded Marie highly, told her of the suspicions that Hannah had confided to the rest of the family. Lafarge's mother insisted that he refused to accept any food from his wife, and only that which had been prepared by one of the family. At this point, it was discovered that the gardener had bought arsenic for Marie, ostensibly to be used to control the rat problem. When confronted with this piece of possibly incriminating information, Marie admitted that it was true, but she made the gardener confirm that she gave him the arsenic to make rat poison paste out of it. Whilst any concerns were momentarily allayed, the following day a white residue was found at the bottom of a glass of sugar water that Marie had administered to Lafarge. A third doctor called René de la Penasse was called in the following day for his opinion. He suspected poison, but by then it was too late, as the patient died a few hours later. Suspicions ran high that Marie had poisoned her husband, but she seemed unconcerned and went to see a solicitor with the will, blissfully unaware that it was invalid. Only Emma would go near her, and already torn by doubts, told Marie that Lafarge's brother-in-law was going to the police in Brive. An investigating magistrate called Morin arrived at Le Glandier on the 15th of January. Impressed by Marie, he listened patiently to the family's accusations and took a sample of the soup, the sugar water, and the eggnog that Anna had put aside. When questioned, the gardener revealed that Marie had given him arsenic with which to make rat poison paste in December as well as in January. Strangely, the paste could be found all over the house, but was untouched by the rats. Morin had the paste collected, questioning the chemist who had sold the arsenic to Marie, and ordered a post-mortem to be done by Lafarge's doctors. He had heard about a new test for the presence of arsenic that pathologists in Paris were using, and asked that this test be carried out as well. The doctors agreed, but hid their ignorance and the intricacies of its procedure. The test in question had been devised 4 years earlier, in 1836, by Scottish chemist James Marsh. Called to help solve a murder in London, he tried to detect arsenic using the old methods. While he was successful, the sample had decomposed and did not convince the jury of the defendant's guilt. Frustrated at this turn of events, he developed a glass apparatus that detected minute traces of the poison and measured its quantity. The sample is mixed with arsenic-free zinc and sulfuric acid, and any arsenic present creates arsine gas and hydrogen. This is then fed through a glass tube, where it is heated, breaking down into hydrogen and arsenic vapor. When the vapor lands on a cold surface, a mirror-like deposit of arsenic is formed. Despite this discovery, word on the Marsh test had not reached Brive. The doctors doing the autopsy on Lafarge only took the stomach before burial, and they subjected this body part to the old methods, which, unknown to them, proved to be unreliable. But they finally agreed that arsenic was indeed found in quantity in the body of Charles Lafarge. More surprising was the analysis of the rat poison paste, which turned out to be nothing more than a mixture of flour, water, and soda. This led to the possibility that Marie used the real arsenic to murder her husband. Any remaining doubts that may have lingered vanished when Emma Pointier turned over Marie's medicine box, and Dr. Lapenasse found that one of the bottles inside contained arsenic. Marie was arrested and held in jail in Brive. There was another surprise. The newspapers reporting on this case turned up something from her past. Before she met Lafarge, Marie had visited the home of Viscountess de Lautaude, one of her schoolmates. While there, her friend's jewels disappeared, and the police were called. When it was suspected that Marie was the culprit, the Viscountess thought that it was too improbable, and the matter was not pursued. In the wake of the newspaper stories regarding the murder, the Viscountess was reminded of the theft and demanded a search for the jewels in Marie's room in Le Glandier. When they turned up during the search, Marie admitted to their possession, but alleged that her friend gave her the jewels to sell since she was being blackmailed by a secret lover. Some newspapers believed Marie's version of events and put all the blame on the Viscountess. When on trial for theft, the court was not so persuaded, and Marie was found guilty and sentenced to 2 years behind bars in the nearby town of Toul. The Lafarge case had generated so much interest that people came from far and wide to see the proceedings. The murder trial lasted 17 days, and the papers made detailed reports. When Marie entered the court in Toul for the first time on the 3rd of September, she projected the image of a woman unjustly accused. The spectators immediately were divided into pro- and anti-Marie factions. One of her defense lawyers, called Pelet, was also the lawyer of the renowned toxicologist Mathieu Orfila, who was the acknowledged expert on the Marsh test in France. He realized that as the case hinged largely on the work done by the bereaved doctors, Pelet wrote to Orfila and showed him the test results. An affidavit by Orfila stating that the tests were conducted so ignorantly that they meant nothing. As soon as the bereaved doctors testified that arsenic was present in Lafarge's body, Pelet read the affidavit aloud and told the court about the Marsh test and demanded that Orfila be called as expert witness. The prosecutor replied that he would consent to the test because he was confident of Marie's guilt, but he felt there was no need to call in Orfila. The president of the court ruled in favour of the prosecution. 2 well-known chemists from Toul, called Dupois and Dupuytren, were assigned to conduct fresh tests, and everyone waited to see what they would say. Dubois testified that despite using the Marsh test carefully, they both failed to find any arsenic. The courtroom was in uproar, and Marie felt vindicated. The prosecutor knew that in some cases, arsenic left in the stomach might spread to other parts of the body, so he arranged for the remains of Lafarge to be exhumed and tested. The results showed that no arsenic was present. The prosecutor had 1 card left to play. He had not forgotten the food items that Marie gave to her husband and had been saved. He requested that the test be performed on those as well. This time, when the chemists reported, they revealed that the samples they tested were positive for arsenic, with the eggnog containing enough to poison 10 people. Because of contradictory evidence, Orfila was to be called for his expert knowledge and settle the matter once and for all. When he arrived, he insisted that a new test be done in the presence of the 2 local chemists, and this was carried out in an anteroom of the courthouse behind locked and guarded doors. Having finalized the Marsh test successfully, the following day, Orfila entered the courtroom, followed by the 2 local chemists. He revealed that he had found arsenic in the samples taken from the body of Lafarge, excluding all other extraneous sources, such as arsenic naturally occurring in the body from the reagents or from the earth surrounding the coffin. The courtroom was stunned. So how to explain the misleading results obtained by the local experts with the Marsh test? It was not the test that gave the erroneous results, but rather the test was performed incorrectly. Knowing that Orfila's testimony had tipped the balance against them, the defense team wanted to call a known opponent of Orfila, Francois Raspail, to refute testimony. Raspail agreed, as he had done in previous courtroom clashes with Orfila, but he arrived 4 hours too late. The jury had decided on Marie's case, and their verdict was guilty. She was sentenced to life imprisonment with hard labour, to be served at the prison in Montpellier. Her sentence was later commuted by King Louis Philippe to life without hard labour. Whilst there, she wrote her memoirs, which were published in 1841. In June 1852, suffering tuberculosis, she was released by Napoleon III, and she settled in Usat. She died on the 7th of November the same year, still protesting her innocence. As for the monastery, it was bought back by the Carthusian monks in 1860 and flourished. The site of the former foundry and the watermill powering it is now privately owned.